welcome to another edition of the I Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports podcast where I, Richard Harris Jr., talk about why I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s to today. First, I want to say happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. Hope you all get a chance to check out my travel site at Flamp Sports Travel at Facebook.com, as well as www.evotravelagent.com/FWAMP23, spelled FWAMP 23, and listen to my blogs. Because today's topic is one that is hotly debated, and that topic is NFL quarterbacks. In the 80s and 90s, there was a draft in 1983 where 6 pretty darn good quarterbacks were drafted. Now, I may not remember all 6 of them, but I believe John Elway went first. There was Todd Blackledge got drafted. Dan Marino got drafted. Jim Kelly got drafted. Tony Eason got drafted. And Ken O'Brien got drafted. Todd Blackledge is an incredible analyst for college football. As a professional quarterback, he got his brains beat out because the Chiefs didn't have anyone to help him. They didn't have a running game. They didn't have receivers. And then they messed with his confidence. They kept pulling him out of games. If he made a mistake, if he didn't make a mistake, if he wasn't effective, he shared the spot. And you can't do that. You either have to be the guy or not be the guy. Miami let Marino do what Marino did, and Marino became a Hall of Famer, as did John Elway. Kelly did not come in originally. He went to the USFL because they offered him more money. And eventually, he became a Buffalo Bills quarterback and a Hall of Famer. Ken O'Brien was a really good quarterback for the Jets. He was the Offensive Player of the Year in the AFC one year. He could play. Ken O'Brien's issue was kind of the same issue that Blackledge had, in that Ken O'Brien would play well a lot. But Ken O'Brien's team kept falling apart. He had a great receiver named Al Toon, and Toon got hurt a lot. He had concussion issues, cut his short career. His tight ends would get hurt. His other receivers would get hurt. He never had what he needed to compete. And the greatest thing about Ken O'Brien's career, that Ken O'Brien would tell you to, if you listen to him speak, was that he was 10-9 versus Dan Marino. He had a winning record against Marino, which I'm sure shocks a lot of people. Tony Eason was a good quarterback, but unfortunately for Tony Eason was small. And Tony Eason had an issue. Tony Eason had to look over his shoulder because if he wasn't playing well, Steve Grogan came into the games. And Steve Grogan sometimes rallied them to victories and created a little bit of controversy, but it was Eason's team until it wasn't. So what happens in the NFL today is unique, as in the 80s and the 90s, coaches seem to have a quicker hook, to pull back quarterbacks who couldn't get it done. Today, well, there's one team that's doing that, and that's the Patriots. And I was thinking about this today because there's so many arguments that can be made about what Belichick is doing to this poor kid. And there's so many arguments that people don't want to have because people automatically will just say Brady this and Brady that. Brady had established receivers when he came for the Patriots. That is the one thing that Mac Jones does not have. People talk about that Brady played a whole his career and Randy Moss was the only great receiver that he really had. But when I mean established, I mean guys who had been in the league a little bit and weren't starting out, weren't being traded to their 10th team, 5th team, 2nd team, whatever team. They were just guys who played. And they played a lot of that season with Drew Bledsoe as their quarterback. And Drew was a veteran, and Drew ran the show. And Brady learned from watching Drew to run the show. And the reason why Brady, in my opinion, was so prepared for the NFL is that in college, Brady had the same issue that Mac Jones has. And that is in college, Brady had to share the position with Drew Henson. Everybody wanted Drew Henson to play because George Steinbrenner from the Yankees wanted Drew Henson to play baseball. And so that brought extra attention to Drew Henson and brought extra attention, unwanted, to Tom Brady. Tom Brady was a 6th-round draft pick for a reason. He wasn't a 6th-round draft pick because he was Justin Herbert or he was Drew Bledsoe. He was a 6th-round draft pick because he was slow, he had a strong arm, and he wasn't anything special in college. Mac Jones was something special in college. Mac Jones would have won the Heisman had not Devontae Smith absolutely tear up the teams that they had to play in the postseason to get Alabama a championship. No one could cover him. And so Mac Jones in college threw to Waddle. He threw to Jameson Williams. He threw to Devontae Smith. And all those guys are playing in the NFL. His college receivers are better than his professional receivers. And the Patriots keep taking him out of games, killing his confidence. But because Bill Belichick is a legend, no one's ever going to say anything bad about what Belichick's doing. I look at the development of Bryce Young, and C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud is lighting up the NFL. The Houston Texans are legit because C.J. Stroud has receivers that are unknown. Nobody knows who Tank Dell is. Nobody knows who Nico Collins is. Nobody knows who their running back is. No one knows who their tight end is. But he is playing the game like he is Dan Marino. He is making all the throws. He is making the big plays, the little plays. He's playing like he is not scared to play. Then you look at Bryce Young. Bryce Young has a veteran receiver in Thielen, but Thielen is not a deep threat. And so teams are able to let Thielen get 8 or 9 catches for 75 yards. That's not going to kill you. But he don't got what? He has, it's funny because they had running backs last year who could run, and now this year they can't run. And it's stunning what has happened to the progression of these guys. Will Levis today got smart and said, you know what? I'm just going to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry down by the goal line. And if he scores, we're going to win. But the quarterback position today is completely treated like it's the most important thing in sports. In the 80s, it was a very important thing. However, teams ran the football to help bail out their young quarterbacks. The Giants had 2 quarterbacks in the 80s that were interesting. Phil Simms, unless you were sort of in the scouting circuit, you didn't know who the hell Phil Simms was. Jeff Hostetler. You didn't know who Jeff Hostetler was. You didn't know who Scott Bruner was. But you knew who our running backs were because our running backs saved us every week. Our running backs, no matter who it was, from Larry Zonka to Rob Carpenter to Joe Morris to Rodney Hampton, our running game is what our calling card was. Period. Today, everybody thinks they're an offensive genius. So they have to try to do things so creatively or so elegantly or so, what's the right word? So ridiculously crazy that it's like everyone wants to be the 49ers of the 80s or the Chargers of the 80s, who ran offenses that were elaborate. And it's hilarious to me because that's the problem with professional sports today. The problem with professional sports today is nobody wants to do the simple things. Bryson DeChambeau can drive a ball 400 yards. But if he wants to win tournaments, he needs to learn when to go for it and when not to. Simple as that. Because hitting it too far, you put yourself in the rough sometimes. I watched this kid Shelton play tennis. He needs to learn how to power. His serve is so big, it's so unreturnable. He needs to learn how to slice, how to hit the serve down the tee and hit the serve wide and harness his power at proper times. in order for him to be effective. In basketball, everybody is in love with the three-point shot. Instead of driving to the basket on layups, everybody wants to shoot threes. So that's what cracks me up when I hear people talk about the LeBron Michael conversation or Kobe LeBron conversation. If everyone at a fast break is fanning out, who's in the middle? Nobody. And Michael, Kobe, Dr. J, Magic Johnson would go right down the center of the lane and score, as opposed to YMCA basketball. And the NFL, which stands for not for long, the reason why the Chargers stink all the time, why the Giants stink all the time these days, they can't run the football. You can't throw it 40 times a game. Today I'm watching the Chiefs play. And I took Mahomes as my quarterback in FanDuel, and I said, I'm the kiss of death. He ain't going to play well. And in the first quarter, the Raiders shut them down. And then the Chiefs got some running game and were able to run the football that opened everything up. I'm watching this Ravens-Chargers game. It's 13-10. Chargers can't run the football. The Ravens run it for a few plays and then they stop running it. Bryce Young will get better when he gets a running back. Mac Jones has Stevenson, who's not a bad football player. But he needs somebody to throw to. And you can't keep taking him out of games. Same thing with Wilson. You can't keep taking him out of games. You have to make sure your offensive line can block. It's as simple as that. And what killed Todd Blackledge in the 80s was he was running for his life. But what saved Marino was Marino never got hit. Marino played the Bears, 85 Bears. And that was the game that everyone was like, we're going to see if that quick release and everything is legit. And see if he can read coverages and see if he could do this and see if he could do that. And he did. He beat him. And that was supposed to be the Super Bowl that year before New England got hot. And Craig James ran all over everybody. But the point simply was, he never got hit. Tony Eason was a good quarterback until he started getting hit. Jim Kelly never got hit. Never got hit. Think about that. Think about Troy Aikman. His first year at the Cowboys, he got the crap beat out of him. And then they bought him an offensive line. He never got hit. Joe Montana. When the 49ers were winning championships, he never got hit. When he got hit, they didn't win championships. When the Giants beat him up, when the Bears beat him up, they came back the next year and said, okay, watch this. 23-0 in the championship game against the Bears. These young kids today as quarterbacks, that's where it all comes down to. If you could survive getting hit as a kid, you'll be all right. Drew Bledsoe, he didn't get hit that much. But when he got hit, his career ended and Tom Brady came in, and Brady got hit once at the end of the season. After that, Patriots put him in shotgun. He only got hit in the Super Bowl against the Giants. So, yeah, you're killing the kid's confidence in New England. Bryce Young, he's got 5 more games to continue to learn. Clearly, Stroud is the rookie of the year. Levis has got games to learn. I mean, look at Tua last year. Tua got his butt kicked. This year, he ain't getting hit, except for in the games they lose. So I prefer the quarterbacks in the 80s and 90s football because it's smarter football. Because they ran the ball. It was not just because they had good running backs. It's because those running backs saved their quarterbacks' butts. Barry Sanders and Scott Mitchell. Rodney Peete. It's stunning that Lions team didn't win anything. Got to be able to protect your investments. If you're going to invest $40 million a year in these men, as teams are doing these days, got to protect your investment. Because if you don't protect your investment, you're not going to spend $40 million on him, and he's going to be out of the league. This year, next year's draft, there's going to be like 6 or 7 quarterbacks that are pretty good coming in. Will they protect them? Or will they feed them to the Lions? We'll find out.